Hello and welcome to the first in a series of tutorials on GIMP. GIMP stands for the GNU Image Manipulation Program. GNU Image Manipulation Program. It is what's called a raster-based a layer-based raster editor. There's a new version. A raster editor basically takes something that's three-dimensional and smushes it. To rasterize something is to take a 3D image and smush it into something flat. It's a flat image. Like the world is 3D, you take a picture, that is a rasterized image. So when I stick something in here, it's a raster editor. Essentially what it means for our purposes is that it uses what's called a bitmap to describe an image. Every pixel is represented by there are like some clever compression algorithms and things like that out there, but for the most part, the basic idea of a bitmap is that every single pixel in a picture is represented by three values: a red value, a green value, and a blue value. So this is a raster editor because it uses rasterized image. That is to differentiate it from what's called a vector editor, where the images are described mathematically, which are very useful for making things like logos that can be zoomed in and out of basically infinitely without losing any sort of image quality. Whereas with a pixel image, you will lose image quality if you zoom too far in. You'll start to see the pixels. So let's take a peek. This is the basic interface. In the middle here, you'll find a picture. Is where you would load a picture, and I am going to load this one. And I'll just drag it in there, and it'll open up. There's a picture of Rocket right here. That's great. Okay. How do I deselect? Is Control-Shift-A. Control-Shift-A. All right. So the main area, of course, is going to show your image. You can zoom in and out of pictures. And so here's an example of how this is a raster editor. The more I zoom in, we will start to see the individual pixels that start to lose meaning. We're not going to keep zooming in until we see the individual hair cells. We'll start seeing pixels because as an image, it's always going to be just a sample of what reality actually is. But cameras are getting really good, and we're able to take pretty high-resolution pictures. I can see individual hairs on her head. So a couple of things for navigating around on an image, because what we want to do for this video is just kind of give you a look around on the image, on how to navigate and how to find different basic tools. So one thing is, when I'm zooming in, you have to hold the control key down, and then you can scroll with the mouse wheel. And that can zoom in basically on whatever you point at. So point at that dock, point at that boat over there, point at this bumper, point at Rocket's face. To move the picture like this, I'm basically clicking the mouse wheel without holding any other keys down. So you just click down on the mouse wheel, and then you can move the image around. It's a little different in Photoshop, and this is basically the primary competitor to Photoshop. Photoshop is a professional thing. This is also professional grade software, but it's open source, so it doesn't have some of the same bells and whistles, and some of the interface tweaks are a little different. Okay, so a couple things let's look at. Basic operations that you might perform on a raster editor or on a photo editor. So we have our basic tools up here. You can actually use these to move around. So this is the move tool. This moves your image around on the canvas. So this checkerboard thing is the canvas. And that is sort of like the viewport through which you'll see any image that you put in there. So if I move the picture on the canvas, I can actually move it off the canvas, and it will no longer be part of the picture, or at least not as it's being currently rendered. Let's undo all those moves. This is the selection tool. This is what you can use to do things like, so if I have that layer selected, I can do things like cut out this chunk, and it will delete that. In this case, it'll paint it white, but I can actually, if I add an alpha channel and then hit delete, then I can actually see through to the canvas. And that's how you can make images with transparency and things like that. The lasso selection tool is for selecting you know, a kind of a free-form area of a picture. And, you know, I can, like, use it to Control-Shift-A, yeah. So I can, like, select this, and then Control-Copy, and then Control-Paste, and then it's created another layer. So we'll make that layer for real, and let's make a few of them. Make it a real layer. Yeah, so you can copy and paste things. You can paste from one image to another image. You can actually open multiple images in there, and they'll be tabbed up here on top. So, and then these two layers, I can turn them on and off. And delete those layers, get rid of them. Okay, so that's the lasso tool. This one is the fuzzy select tool, which will try to like select contiguous regions. It's pretty bad at it. The place where it works really well is on simple images with lots of basic colors. Photographs, it's almost useless. But it can be quite useful if you have... Oh, and another thing, if you have like... you can select by color. So if I select this, it'll select everything in the picture that's the same color. So that can actually be really useful if you're looking at if you're selecting by color is really useful if you have like a monochromatic, you know, you have two colors and you want to just select all of one color, or select a white background or something like that on a very simple image. Very useful. The crop tool is very useful and one that you should use all the time. I can select a section of the picture and it'll crop out everything else. The crop tool is cropping is a very, very, very important photo editing operation, and everybody should learn how to crop. You can do cropping in a little bit more sophisticated way by going up into Image up here and hit things like canvas size, and then you can actually change the canvas size. So let's say, so this little right here makes it so that these two things are linked, but let's say I want to cut out 2000, get this down to 2000 pixels in width, and then I can choose which 2000 pixels I want, and then hit resize. And then now all that stuff is out there still, nothing's been deleted, but it has been effectively cropped. And if I wanted to just get rid of that, I would just say cropped content. What is it? What do I do? I can't remember what I do. Flatten image. Yeah, there you go. And that gets rid of everything outside of the canvas. Let's see, what else do we want to learn how to do? We want to look at the next tool. Let's see, what have we got? We've got Unified Transform Tool. So this is for transforming things like flipping, warping and skewing effects. You can play around with this. I don't use it much myself, but you can use it to do some interesting things. And basically by grabbing these different handles, and if you'll notice some of these are, like this is a resize handle, this one is kind of a skewing handle, and this one is kind of a, sliding the edge handle. So yeah, you can kind of play around with these different things to see what they do. Various resize reset. So it's sort of like a universal transform tool. It transforms the image. We've got warp transform. This allows you to so it's like see what it's doing. You can play around with the settings on these tools, and you can do some scary stuff. There. Undo all that. So this is the warp tool. The paint bucket tool is used to fill in colors. This is not going to really fill in much of anything here. You can use it. You can actually use this in conjunction with so this is something that I would do when I was doing tutorials. Let's create a new layer on top of this and fill that in with black. Then take the selection and then shrink it by say 6 pixels, and then delete. And then you would essentially create a circle around something. So I basically fill in a circle with black, shrink the selection, and then delete everything inside the selection to leave just the circle. And so I would use this for screenshots and things like that for my classes. I do things a little bit differently these days, but this is basically what I used to do, and it works really well. And I still sometimes do it. So then you've got your basic paintbrush tools. So you can just, see it's drawing in there. You might want to make the paintbrush a little bit bigger. You can do that. You can change what the paintbrush looks like. Drawing stars. It's not all that great. Something like this maybe could be cool. So you can play around with that. So the paintbrush tool, then there's an eraser tool, which erases content from your picture and then just converts it to whatever the background color is. So you basically have two colors set up at all times, and one is a foreground color and one is a background color, and then you can just have them. So if I swap the two and then use the eraser, it just paints everything black. So it really just means that you have two different colors that you can play with when you're drawing. And just by swapping between one of those colors is mapped to the eraser and one of them is mapped to the the various drawing tools. Then the clone tool, which allows you to like copy and paste various areas. It's actually pretty useful. Let's see, what does it say? Selectively copy an image or pattern using a brush. So basically, the clone tool is kind of outside of the scope of our tutorial. We're not going to use it much. Smudge tool smudges things up. The paths tool. We will probably not do a whole lot with paths, but one of the things that you can use paths for is to cut something out of an image. Again, I'm just doing this kind of really quickly, but this is kind of one of the ways that you can do some very fun little Photoshop jobs by just cutting something out. There we go. And then you go up in here to paths, and then you say path to selection, and then that creates a selection where your path is. And normally you'd want to create many more little dots on your path. You want to create like a really detailed path to cut something out precisely, and then select that right layer, hit Control-C, and then when I zoom out, there we go, I can paste that in. And then I've got, something that I can do like face swaps or whatever, So the path tool is a great way to like snip out. It's basically like a pair of scissors. I can snip out an area of my image without doing it. It's non-destructive. It doesn't hurt anything. You can add text to the layer. Rocket. Although for some reason the text is white. Let's make it black. And let's make it bigger. So yeah, when you start typing, it gives you kind of a little interface that allows you to change things, and you can play around with text quite a bit. How long is this? So it's 13 minutes. So anyway, you can play around with text and do all sorts of fun effects just using that color picker tool, which allows you to pick a color from your image, and then it will. I guess I don't. Yeah, whatever. The color picker tool, it's supposed to let you pick a color and add it here, but for some reason it's not doing that, and I'm not sure why. I don't use it very often, so who knows. And then the zoom, I don't know why you would use this to zoom when you can just use the control and mouse wheel. So anyway, that's the basic rundown of the basic tools and things that are available. One thing that you might find yourself doing is... let's see, I got a list of things I wanted to hit. So we changed the image size. We used cropped. We used rotating image. So this is under transform, and you can do things like rotate your image. Image, transform, arbitrary rotation. You can do stuff like this. You can flip it. Image, transform, flip horizontally. Boom. It's kind of cool. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was changing like the image size. So scaling the image. So this is a way that you can do some, like make things more suitable for web, make them fit in emails and things like that, because sometimes a file is going to be really huge because it's an image. So one thing you can do is like, let's drop the resolution down to 72 pixels per inch. That'll make it smaller. Let's say this is too big. Maybe we only need it to be 500 pixels wide. So you can change that and it will automatically, as long as this link is on, it'll change that to match. The image will get smaller. You don't lose a whole lot of quality, but the file size is going to be like a third as big. And then you'll be able to attach it to an email a little bit more easily. So that's changing file sizes, rotate or flip, and that's about it. That's all I had for this video. We'll see you in the next video where we start talking about layers and layer masks.